living.
Okay.
Somebody said they cannot hear. Can you hear, Vanda? We should.
You're quite difficult to hear, Andrea. I think you need to speak closer to the mic, please.
Anything better now?
Yeah, much better. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for pointing it out. So thanks a lot for joining this morning, this session in the context of the Inspire conference. And you've been told that we will also be welcoming a number of speakers, a panel discussion, but also we'll use Slido to engage you and get your feedback, apart from possibly also raising questions. So in order to test the Slido functionality, I would like to ask my colleague Vlado to pull out the first question and just see and test if you can access the application and respond to the first question by indicating what type of an organization you are from. Are you from a regional national administration, municipality? We're really looking at how to help smart cities, communities. Are you from some kind of an organization helping the innovation, either a digital innovation hub or living lab or policy lab? Are you a company in particular? We're interested in seeing how many or what percentage of SMEs we have, or academia. It may be that your organization type is not mentioned. We're sorry for that. This is just a quick test and seeing where you're from. Obviously, we have quite a lot from regional and national administrations, certainly related probably to those organizations or administrations that work on the Inspire directive and its implementation. But we also have municipalities. That's good to see. And certainly innovation hubs, living labs, who can, of course, be helpful when bringing the digital innovation on the ground to the cities. We also have companies and, of course, academia. So that's interesting. We give it another 10 seconds just to see if more of you can join. There's only 30 people who have responded. It's just a click by going to slido.com and using the hashtag Inspire 2020, and you will see just by clicking on the right organization type that it will show up online. And another 5-10 seconds and we'll close it there. Okay, thank you. I think we can stop here. It was more or less just to test. And we do see that most of you are either from national regional administrations, small and medium-sized enterprises, but also academia. And we are pleased to also have, of course, living labs and the cities on board. So my name is Andrea Halmos, and I work, as I said, in the unit dealing with smart mobility and living. And I also will serve as a bit of a moderator for today's session. But at the same time, I would also like to give you a bit of a policy background or a context on why we have selected this very important topic and where we're coming from, what are our policy objectives. We have also organized it together with our colleagues in the Joint Research Center, who will also complement this presentation by a presentation related to their work on Inspire. So our objective is to talk about the role of smart cities in meeting the objectives of the Green Deal. And I wanted to start by looking at how the Sustainable Development Goals has brought us closer to actually mainstreaming sustainability in our policy activities. It's really a great opportunity to actually bring it into an integrated strategy. And as you will see, that the European Commission, in the context of the Green Deal, is also going to look at how the implementation of these SDGs will be implemented really across the EU through the European semester. And we consider that digital technologies can be a very powerful enabler to actually implement many of these SDGs. And we need to be able to actually turn data and digital technologies also in the benefit of achieving these SDGs. Now, what we also see is that at local level, there is a great potential for achieving these SDGs. We know that many of those targets are going to need the engagement and coordination of local level, but we also see that many of the European cities, at least, are still lacking adaptation plans for future-based sustainability models. Yet, in particular, smart cities are a fertile ground to actually help the transformation towards not just smart, but at the same time sustainable cities, because they do have this ambition for reducing resources, to use the technology to be able to become more effective in using those, able to create a better sustainable environment and living conditions for people and businesses. And they also serve as potentially as innovation hubs or labs where a lot of new solutions can perhaps be more easily tested. And they can also really contribute to, for example, behavioral change at local level. So we see that it's a very promising area whereby cities, smart cities using digital technologies can actually contribute to these objectives. However, as recognized, for example, by Eurocities, there's quite some challenges to achieve that. One of them is identified around capacity, and this is certainly related to competencies, know-how, resources, and so on, which we're certainly working on. But another one is related to data. And we'll be talking a lot about this today, in particular on how cities can get access, reuse, and turn data into the knowledge, the insights, the kind of services that can actually help all this make happen. Now, certainly the digital is very much recognized. The power of the digital is also recognized in the Commission's European Green Deal. And we're really pleased that this doesn't only recognize the digital, but it actually gives a lot of ambition on how to do that, how to use data, how to use artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, cloud technologies to actually accelerate and maximize the impact of those policies in support of the Green Deal, for example, through distance monitoring, better insights, optimizing resources. But at the same time, it of course recognizes the role ICT and the ICT sector plays on the environment and puts forward quite ambitious objectives in reducing the impact of ICT on the environment, but at the same time, how really digital tools can help move forward the Green Deal objectives. Now, what is really, as you know, in the recovery plan also after the crisis is really, let's say, promising, is that the recovery that Europe has put forward is both a digital and a green transition. And so we will be looking at how actually to come out also of the crisis by trying to go through certainly a digital transformation, but with the green transition in mind. So what I wanted to also show you is that there's been a lot of thinking on how to make this happen with the help of digital. One particularly interesting study from the UN is a study that looked at what kind of digital ecosystem would be needed to actually help achieve the goals, for example, of the Green Deal, and what kind of underlying elements would be needed. And they're looking at things like data, a set of data and the data around the data kind of building blocks, infrastructure, algorithms, analytics, and insights and applications. And I'm pleased to say that also the kind of way we see how smart cities and communities can contribute to creating this digital ecosystem for the benefit of the Green Deal is grouped around these kind of concepts. We have been working on, if you look at the different stacks, we have been working on ensuring the right absolute basic infrastructure and connectivity of cities, as you will know from the Wi-Fi for EU and many other activities around broadband and 5G and so on. But then we want to ensure the necessary data is available. We want to ensure that there is interoperability and a way to manage all these data flows through interoperable urban platforms. And on top of that, then we can create, or we can support cities to create, for example, artificial intelligence enabled data services in support of the Green Deal. So there is a whole idea on how we can build this step by step. And if I look at the different elements of it, yes, we've been working quite a lot on the infrastructure part, on the urban data platforms, to ensure that we have the underlying let's say, building block that will allow the managing of different data from different sectors, from different parts of the city, from different data sources, but also managing the myriad of different stakeholders. And so many of you will have been with us on this trip or journey, and will have known that we've been working with the communities of cities and their representative groups on developing the appropriate interoperability frameworks for these urban data platforms, and which has also been let's say, captured in the so-called Joint Boost Sustain Living in EU declaration. It's a political declaration that over 70 cities have already signed, putting forward a set of principles and committing these signatories to actually go ahead with implementing interoperable open urban digital platforms, so that they could actually ensure that they're not logged into certain situations, certain technologies, but also ensure the data privacy of citizens in their cities. And you're more than welcome to join the list of signatories by following this link. We have also been working in DG Connect, of course, on artificial intelligence. As you know, the different the communication of artificial intelligence, the coordinated plan on artificial intelligence with member states, but more recently also looking at how artificial intelligence in public services, what it would mean, what are the use cases, what would be the impact, how to measure, what kind of indicators do we need for that. We're also looking at setting up so-called AI testing facilities across the EU. So these could be tested in a safe environment. We also have working on a huge AI for on-demand platform, which would encompass algorithms and computing power repositories. And we've also worked with digital innovation hubs that focus on AI that help companies, but essentially also public sector organizations on the ground to test AI for their specific needs. And so if you look at what we've already been working on, the data space, the AI on demand platform, these testing facilities and the hubs, and also a lot of efforts in past projects, but you will see today throughout the panel presentations that there are many excellent AI-enabled urban applications. You will hear a lot about all kinds of projects that tested different data services in many cities for better mobility, smarter mobility, better energy management, and so on, but also digital twins for cities. We'll have an example on that. What we feel, however, is that there's still a gap in better ensuring that data is available for the cities and communities to be able to really benefit from these AI-enabled solutions. There really is a need for data. And we are looking at the promising objectives of the European data strategy, a pillar of which is really about rolling out common European data spaces. And as if you're familiar with what it has put forward, is a set of sectoral data spaces that would allow to agree on certain access to data, data sharing, and certain governance for the management and quality of the data within those sectors. In addition to that, I just wanted to quickly mention that relating to the data strategy, we recognize that for cities and communities, it's extremely valuable also because it's really looking at how to access the data, in particular of great interest for cities, private data or privately held data with public interest, how that could be useful for cities to have better insights, better decisions. And so some of the forthcoming initiatives will really help us to get bigger clarity on that, but also the so-called high-value data sets, which will make a set of government data open and reusable, which will be also extremely important for cities, and the Green Deal objectives, such as those related to geospatial data or mobility or statistical data, meteorological data. So when I was talking about the data spaces, you may have heard of, sectoral data spaces in the making, such as that for manufacturing or for health, and some others. And what we are also recognizing is that in the context of smart cities and communities, these actually are almost all necessary for smart cities. We're all going to be looking at solutions that, if they're integrated and really useful for cities, they're oftentimes a combination of mobility, energy, perhaps health data together with relevance at local level. So there is a recognition that in addition to those, there will be a need for a smart communities data space, a data space where there could be an agreement on how to access, share, reuse data, which is at the moment oftentimes on an agreement by agreement basis. We'll hear about that more later. And I just want to leave you with this kind of a first thought process on what the building blocks could be. What kind of data sets would be the most, there's so many different ways to start, but what would be the priority data sets that would have the biggest impact? And what role, for example, the Inspire related data sets could play in this? What kind of governance would such a data space have? What would be the rules, the commonly agreed standards, specifications on sharing, reusing data? What kind of functions should this data space have for the communities? And of course, there may be many other issues to think about. So I would like to leave you with this. So that we can come back to these discussions later during the session. And just remember that, of course, everything is being recorded and you can continue discussing this. And I will be happy to join the discussion on the Inspire Forum, but we're also happy to hear your feedback now or later at this email address. So I'd like to stop here and give the floor to my colleague, who will talk, Francesco Pignatelli from the Joint Research Center, who will talk about geospatial data for smart city applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Yes, Lorena, you can, yes, okay.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to thank Andrea for giving us the possibility to present, to try to answer to some of your questions that you have highlighted in your very comprehensive introduction. First of all, I would like, you see my name in the presentation, but this is a collective effort of GRC team. As you know, the Joint Research Center is supporting Inspire and all geospatial work through ELISE and the digital program with many colleagues. I mentioned Michael Lutz, Karen Fullerton, Seto Vlado, Gianluca Misuraka, Lorena Hernandez, and so on, Simon, Ray, and so on. Giacomo Martirano. So we are here also to answer some of your questions. Next slides, please. I'll try to cover in 7 minutes, as you said, some of the key points. So the key points we want to address is the role of Inspire and the reuse of Inspire principle for harmonizing data sharing conditions. Also, the ongoing work of the ELISE action, which is part of the interoperability solution for public administration as a square program. I see also some colleagues from Digit today participating. And the ISA program supports innovation through location interoperability framework, studies, and application. And also we will consider a bit the evolution of SDI to support data ecosystems and data spaces and the role of a high-value data set, as you mentioned before. And we want to say that geospatial is not just a category, but rather a small city enabler. Next slide, please. Inspire identify 34 data teams, just to remind, grouped in 3 annexes according to different implementation time frame. From Annex 1, most urgent, related to reference datasets, to Annex 3, related to more environmental teams. Bounded by red box data teams more relevant to smart city context, you can see here we have evidenced the data which are more important for smart city context. It's important to mention also that for each data team, Inspire define conceptual and physical data models that enable technical and semantic interoperability across borders and across sectors. So it's very relevant for what we are discussing today. Next slide, please. This is the Inspire roadmap, encompassing a decade and now approaching in October 2020, the deadline for having all the data set of all annex fully interoperable, harmonized accordingly to the data models and discoverable and accessible through network services and according to harmonized condition for access and use. I would say that is an unprecedented the organizational effort spent by member states to cope with Inspire legally binding requirement. So in many cases, member states took the opportunity to reorganize and modernize their national and regional SDI, starting the evolution from data silos towards data ecosystem. That's important because without the commitment of the member states, we would not have been able to achieve these results. Next slide, please. As we said, the evolution, we are talking about data ecosystem, we are talking about smart cities. Smart cities are important pocket of innovation in data ecosystems. There is no commonly agreed definition of data ecosystem, but this one may be helpful. A data ecosystem is where a number of actors interact with each other and their environment for a specific purpose, generating value by producing, exchanging, consuming data in a collectively governed and operated way. The topic of data ecosystem, innovation, location, intelligence, and collaboration is very relevant for ELISE action on geospatial interoperability. As I said, this is part of the ISA Square program. ELISE has developed a location interoperability framework, which is used to assess the state of play in member states. The framework and body of knowledge is kept up to date through studies on new topics. Knowledge is shared through a skill program of webinar, workshop, and videos. ELISE is also involved in piloting or developing particular geospatial interoperability solution, addressing, for example, data ecosystems in different sectors, in particular in transport and energy. The box in the center shows some of the topics addressed through these different channels of activities. Next slide, please. I leave the slide to you so you can have more information later on. These are a list of relevant ELISE studies that we have performed in the last couple of years. We have defined the guidelines for public administration location privacy. We have seen in which ways Inspire can support multimodal travel information systems, the role of spatial infrastructure in digital government transformation, public administration. And after the Tallinn Declaration, we moved towards the digital government. And so we made a lot of studies on artificial intelligence in public sector, blockchain in digital government, digital platform, and the role of digital platform in public services, API studies, and also exploring digital government transformation in the European Union. All these studies are available on our ISA Square website, at least on Join Up. Next slide, please.
Francesco, can you see the slide?
Yes, okay. Okie dokie. Just a second. Okay. Yes. This is an example in which way we have reused the Inspire principle and data share, data specification in the energy efficiency domain. So we have developed a series of use cases on digital platform for public lighting implemented in Italy. We have developed this use case with more than 8,000 municipalities. And also there are other list of reuse of Inspire in other domain of the energy in the energy area. So, for example, for energy performance of building and also for sustainable energy and climate action plan. So we don't have time to go more in detail. Next slides. What I would like to also underline that some of the pointers emerging from Elise that relate to SDI are shown in this slide that we have prepared for this workshop. These include the importance of being use case driven and demand focused, both in relation to data ecosystem and in relation to particular actors. The increasingly importance of private-public sector collaboration that Andrea also mentioned before, and the importance of cities for innovation. This will be a strong area of geospatial demand and best practice model that this should be progressed. Also, the implication of data frameworks to support these needs and multiple data ecosystem will require significant attention. In other terms, smart city, the multiplicity of services and the need to integrate data from different thematic sources with different level of government. So it's important to have a data framework at EU, national, regional, local level will be an important factor in developing the data framework that we are talking today. Next slide, please. This is some work we have done in our release and ULF work in the past, and in this case is on the transport area. This is a typical example of data ecosystem that we developed in the past. This one relates to road navigation and includes the different actors and processes involved in journey planning and rerouting to deal with congestion or accident. So as you can see, this example involves a combination of static and dynamic data, typical of a data ecosystem, and multiple actors. So we will have road authorities, mapping agencies, map providers, navigation system vendors, traffic control center, the car driver with their navigation system, GPS satellite, traffic detector, and so on. So all these data need to talk together, need to be integrated, need to be interoperable. And so this is a very important challenge to cover. Next slide, please. So this development in data economy have been recognized in the recently published European data strategy, as Andrea said at the beginning. The aim, amongst other things, is to use data as a means of both supporting and engaging business. The data strategy involves the creation of a series of data space in key topic areas with initial focus on high-value data set. It has been recognized in the strategy that Inspire will have a contribution to make in the Green Deal data space. So important Inspire for Green Deal. And the geospatial data will be particularly important in the Green Deal data space, which involves the creation of Destination Earth, a digital twin of the Earth. We can also envisage that geospatial data will be important in terms of contents as a means of cross-referencing other data and integration in all the data spaces. In this context, the strategic focus on high-value geospatial dataset, such as postcode or addresses, will be important for smart city data framework. So I will stop here because I think we have a bit with the time allocated, we cannot say too much. If you want to know more, next slide, we can contact us on Elise or in Inspire, and we will be happy to answer some of your questions today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Francesco. And certainly we recognize that Inspire is for sure relevant to the Green Deal data space, but certainly as from your examples, it has also come out that for the eventual smart communities data space, it may also have a lot of relevance. I would now like to go to the panel and hear concrete examples from the ground on what kind of applications have been tested and used across different cities in Europe. But before doing that, I'd like to give the floor to Martin Brinskov, who is here representing the Open and Agile Smart Cities, and to perhaps just start giving us, a context from your end and kind of for introduction for the panel. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everyone. Do you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Perfectly.
Very good. And thank you for the introductions here. I think thinking back on how much work has already been done, as my title here suggests, I think we should really focus on building something that we have in common and build on what we have. And Inspire is, of course, I don't know how to say it, the grandmother of all initiatives in this, and by far the most successful, I would say. So allow me to give three perspectives as we are seeing some more concrete examples. My name is Martin Brunskov. I represent a lot of cities from OSCE network, born in Europe, but global. And I also chair the National Danish Committee trying to put together some of these things. My first point is on terminology, in fact. So there's been a lot of discussion. So what does it mean to work with smart cities? And it can mean all kinds of things. But if we take actually this quite old but also recent definition, the communities part has really been forefronted because it captures both the dense populations, which are the urban areas, which of course have their own opportunities and challenges, but it is in fact all of us. And it recognizes that there are physical, human, as well as digital elements to this. And of course, we have been working with information before the digital arrived. We should remember that. So in a way, we are dealing, when we're dealing with communities or this perspective, we are dealing with everything. Just a short economic perspective. I don't want to go into the details, but just to say that this is a distribution of the size of the subnational governments on GDP in the nation states. And you can see in countries like Denmark, which I represent, which is really, really high on the percentage of the overall government expenditure, and in fact on GDP as such, Belgium, Finland, many others, Spain, Germany. So it's actually a big part of our economy that we are now trying to somehow build together through data. And that's also why it's both important and a challenge to address. It has implications what we do. So in a word, it's all sectors coming together. We can't meaningfully take them apart even, and this was interesting to see in the opening Slido, who is represented here, much of the governance lies on the national level, but much of the economy actually happens, and the meeting all of these issues happens on the local level. So how do we manage that? I think that's one of the key points we need to address. So when all sectors come together, it's obvious all data come together. And how do we then meaningfully connect that? Again, this is not the time to go into a lot of detail, but certainly we don't want to connect everyone with everything. We have historical examples of how this is not good for our built environment, certainly, and now also with the corona, we know that too much interaction can also be a problem. So this common ground or the minimal approach is also a way to ensure that our investments, whether they are to the green side or the social side or the more infrastructural side, that they actually move us forward in terms of innovation and reduce the risk that are coming with building things together. So I won't go into a lot of details, as I said, just to highlight that actually common information models and data models like the Inspire efforts are central. I would probably say the central part, because there's so much out there, but then where's the common ground? We cannot build ontologies of the world. We've tried that. It doesn't work practically. So what is the pragmatic steps? Later, Serjan will present from Novi Sad an example of how this has been tried out. And this is one of the large-scale pilots, IoT large-scale pilot for smart city communities in Europe. Really seeing then what happens on the ground. We have also the lighthouse examples here with Trinidad and Triangulum. So we have done a lot of things, and Inspire has been part of what has gone into these efforts. We know a lot. I won't go to details here, but I have left it in the slide so you can follow up and see also practically what is here. What's happening then on the ground is that a lot of guidance is coming up. Of course, we have top-down, we have these directives, and they are helpful, they are necessary. But then they need to be translated into a national, regional, local, both sides of the market context. And that's, of course, happening everywhere. We know all the SDG, the UN efforts, clearly. So the global regions also have their efforts. We know US, China, Europe, India, all kinds of places. But I want to highlight one and just mention it here. It was already mentioned by Andrea, and this is this livingin.eu declaration, which is a concrete attempt from the local side to bring all of this together. So this is an initiative which has 5 commitments. One of them is technical, and it builds on what is already there, including many of the things that were mentioned just before in the introduction. And the outcome by the end of the year is actually a condensed list of common ground specifications, in this case called the MIMS Plus, as well as some operational guidance on how to make this practical. This would give input not just to the institutions that are setting up now the big frameworks around this, but also those on the ground who are tasked with translating. So the local governments, the national governments, and the governmental organizations there. So again, just to say that data harmonization, interoperability is really at the center of what is happening there, but let's not try and boil the ocean and put everything together. So this is my last slide. I think we should recognize, and we will see in the panel now, that we do have a lot of validated mechanisms. We actually have data spaces, and we understand the challenges ahead of us. We have very good roadmaps, but then we need to grow the market, and that has to be both sides of the market. One of the issues have been, we've focused so much on separating e-government with, well, everything else. And that doesn't cut it for data. So that is one of the big efforts, going from the silos to the ecosystem, as it was so well described before. So we need to raise awareness about these things, not just push and implement. We need to mentor. We need to have these testing and implementation pilots. We cannot jump to full-scale market yet. And then it has to be seen as useful, agile, simple, and trusted, whatever we do. So I'm very happy to see all the forces here, and thank you for the floor, Andrea. The links are in the slides if you want to explore further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. I very much appreciated also the specific thoughts put into the how to get towards this data space, and indeed there's a lot of already tested guidances and routes to get there. And I think we'll be hearing about those also through the other presenters who will present their cases from specific projects, most of them, as well as one from a digital innovation hub working with cities. So I think we'll have yet another set of very interesting presentations. As already mentioned, I would like to ask now Jean Crochot from Novi Sad, from the Synchronicity, to present their case, their pilot that they had in the Novi Sad pilot in this project. Thank you, Stian.
Okay, now you should hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Martin, for the introduction. You actually stole a few of my slides, so now I have trouble to cover that part. Joking. So my name is Jean Crochot, and I'm a founder and CEO of a company called DunavNet, and we are based in Serbia and in Ireland. And for many years, we are working in the IoT domain and building turnkey IoT solutions. So we put everything together from sensors, gateway, selecting communication protocols, and then build the actual cloud logic, data analytics, visualization, and more recently, some of these AI and the machine learning algorithms. And Smart cities were the first domain that we started with, and then later on we expanded it to agriculture and smart manufacturing domains as well. So actually 10 years ago, what we did was to build a solution that will monitor air quality. And at that stage, we had to build devices on our own because there were no suitable low-cost sensors that could do the trick. And also actually communication over mobile network was a bit of a problem. So it was a rather challenging thing. And to make it even more complicated, we decided to put those devices onto public buses and to create a mobile environmental monitoring network. And it was very interesting project. And at that time, I spoke to a few environmentalists or engineers working for different environmental protection agencies. And they were not really excited about that because they saw a lot of issues with that. Calibration, accuracy, you can't do it this way, you can't do it that way, you have to do it the way we did it all the time. And now if we fast forward 10 years, a lot has changed and sensors have improved, communication networks have improved, and also the mindset of the people working in the environmental monitoring has changed. So this deployment of low-cost air quality sensors has become more of a norm and more accepted. And it's something that is happening now across Europe. As a company, then we added noise to this portfolio, and then more later, water monitoring. And with this type of setup, we have covered rather well the environmental monitoring. And with the appearance of the Green Deal, we were able also to relate it to some higher level policies and say that we are addressing those aspects in a rather comprehensive manner. The issue with this, so we were there from the, I would say, very beginning of the whole IoT movement, or when we were designing architectures and everything. So all our solutions were designed in this rather uniform manner with open protocols and open interfaces. But the problem that we had for these type of solutions when it comes to deployment in cities was how we replicate this across different cities. If we are deploying just air quality or noise and air quality on its own, it's not so much of a problem because then it's a standalone system that you can deploy and you have your own devices, you have your own protocols, no problems. However, in most of the cities, they already have some infrastructure in place already, and they want to integrate the data coming from these environmental monitoring systems into some of the existing systems. And if we have to go city by city and go through all the different procurement processes and end up in a situation where we have to upgrade or extend, implement some new protocols, new data formats for each city, that makes our life very difficult. So we're trying all the time to find a way how to overcome that. And I'll come to the point around synchronicity and how it helped us actually overcoming that particular problem. Before I move to that, just want to highlight one thing that we have that I think is rather interesting. I like that this particular feature of our solutions is, air quality monitoring, noise monitoring, all these things. It's usually represented by some graphs, tables, colors. And what we did is to convert this air quality index into music. And so we automatically create music that gives you the emotion that you should have depending on the air quality. So if the air quality is great, you will have some very light music, cheerful music. If it is very bad quality, it will be very, very deep and kind of sending you in a wrong, in a very unhappy mood. And this is something that is now used in one of the regional TVs. They added this as an addition to the weather forecast information they have on TV news every evening. And people like it. So I think that's one of the nice ways of how air quality, how environment monitoring can be made more acceptable or more understandable to general population. Now, going back to this whole thing around replicability and how we address different types of cities, when synchronicity came about, we said, okay, so let's try to use synchronicity to make our solutions easily transferable and easily portable, applicable in different cities. And it's not just about monitoring air quality and creating some sort of graphs or music, but we wanted to integrate that with more activities that are happening in the city, and to get citizen engagement, to see how this environment monitoring information can be of help to local companies. So we looked into this from the perspective of construction industry, because in all the cities you will have a lot of construction sites, and they will be generating a lot of noise, they will be generating a lot of dust, potentially creating problems for the air quality. So we wanted to see how we can monitor these type of things, how we can let people in that city, people who are living around these construction sites, know what's happening there and whether these construction sites are complying with all the different regulations. Help the construction companies to understand where they are in the sense of complying with the regulation, and then also help the public administration to deal with that. So we had a rather comprehensive view of this, and with the help of a synchronicity approach, and this is now the slide that you also saw, this is actually coming from this guidebook of synchronicity, and it's very nice that it's now there. When we started the project, it wasn't there, so it was a bit of a trouble to get through all the information and understand everything that should be done. But with this type of framework, we were able to have, or we got a framework that helps us to standardize our offer and make it portable, replicable between the cities. The memes that Martin mentioned helped a lot, and this is actually helping a lot when it comes to exchanging information between different parts of the systems, so that we don't have to send a long memorandum explaining, okay, this is how when we say data, this is what we mean. These are the measurements, these are the units and all the things that go with it. But we can reference to these MIM models and say, this is the data formats are in line with this MIM or that MIM, and then the other system can easily reuse it. The whole thing about this, so we went for the synchronicity project. We did our deployment, as I said, here in Novi Sad, the largest one, and then also we did the replication in Santander and in Carouge in Switzerland. And it really helped us to understand how you go from, if there is already synchronicity or MIM kind of compliance setup, as it was the case in Santander and Carouge, and how we can go about creating such a setup in a city where such infrastructure does not exist as it's in Novi Sad. With the support of these activities, we managed to convince Novi Sad that they should go in this direction and join Open and Agile Smart City Association. It also happens to the city of Subotica, which is another one here in the country. And this is now the seed for all the other cities to follow that suit and really try to replicate these things and not reinvent applications and frameworks all the time. And just to show that this is really helping, so this is a slide that I used in a recent commercial presentation. So there's some text in Serbian that you can see there. But the point of this, of showing this slide, that this commercial presentation to one of the public administrations was, look, we are building on something that has been tested already in a number of different cities across the world. There has been a lot of money put into this from the European Commission in order to have these alignments in place. And you as the city will benefit from faster deployment, simpler procurement, and it will open up digital market for local companies. So if DunamNet as a local company or another company builds something which is in line with this type of framework, then they'll be able to offer that same solution to all the other cities that are there on the map. And this is something that actually resonated really well with the public administration, with the mayor, because he said, okay, now I understand and why we should go this way and not continue building independent solutions based on some proprietary technologies. So just to conclude.
Can I ask you to start concluding, please?
Just yes.
Thank you.
What the point is that we need open platforms that are capable of interacting with any type of IoT device, that these standardized data formats and interfaces are really something that is crucial to have wide adoption of smart city applications. And we have to have in mind the integration of legacy applications. So we are never coming into a greenfield. It's always some infrastructure already there. So we have to take care of that. And having all the data from multiple sources in one place is actually creating then a good basis for a lot of data analytics and AI-based city-level improvements. So all of these things have been done in synchronicity, and now in part of this NG-IoT, Next Generation IoT project, are being taken forward and used as an input to creation of different policies on the European level. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Lovely example with the music. I think that everybody will remember that. But also what you have said about all this experience and bringing together the different data from different sources into one place. So we'll move on to the next speaker, but try to keep this in mind that we'll come back to this on how the smart communities data space could help in that, and what kind of functions should that data space have, so we can discuss it after all the presentations. I would now like to ask Jarmo Suomisto from Helsinki to tell us about the Helsinki digital twin, the 3D Plus from Helsinki. Thank you, Jarmo.
Yes, good afternoon from Helsinki. It's actually afternoon here. And so I hope you see my presentation.
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you. So my name is Jarmo Suomisto. I'm basically an architect. I work in the Helsinki Mayor's office in the strategies division, and my main work, I only work with 3D city models and projects connected and combining those models to the different processes and services. In big picture, my work or my team's work is like this. Yes, we have the raw material for city models, point clouds, oblique images, databases, registers, different data models, and of course new geodata from smartphones, something from sensors and so. Yes, with lots of technology, lots of effort, and quite a lot of time, we create two city models over the entire city. So these two models cover the whole city, 500 square kilometers. We have the reality model over the whole city, and then we have the semantic city GML model. And they are both open data. So we have the same service for the city servants inside the city and to the whole world. So we are very open with our data. Of course, there are some restrictions for military reasons and so, but I don't go to those. As they are open data, we of course we want the benefits from the models, and there are so many, of course, so many sectors to get the benefits. It's not only city planning. It's not only communication or visual things. It's lots of more. So we want many kind of benefits from the models, and of course this comes from true technology. Yes, efficiency, productivity, improved planning, monitoring, transparency management, and all those. So and as cities are and as a city servant, I'm for the residents to create and enable better life for the people. That's my big work or issue. Yes. And this, how to get the benefits from them. We see in Helsinki that there are several levels to get the benefits. Of course, we have the data and virtual worlds. Combining those, we have the platform. And then combining those models to the city's internal processes, the services, it's a great benefit. Of course, it's a digitalization process over the whole city and all the services. But as those models are also open data, so they are also open innovation platforms for residents. Anyone can get the wonderful idea. So as we have those platforms as part of our digital infrastructure, we can give the opportunity to whoever to make innovations and produce them and show them and share them. And if they are good, City of Helsinki has no effort to reject them. So we use excellent ideas, of course, all the time. And then I think that highest level is supporting ecosystems. Yes, we have social ecosystems, we have economical ecosystems, we have strategic goals like carbon neutral city, and so carbon neutral city, it's not a process, it's a strategic goal, and it has very many sides, and of course we can support those things. So there are many levels. Some are a little bit easier, some like open innovation, it's always something added to do the normal work, but many levels of getting those, and some are easier than others. Yes, and then do the practical use cases and services we have created now. So we have the Helsinki Energy and Climate Atlas. You see the address there. You get the slides there, and you have the link there. You can go there. It works on every device, on a smartphone, whatever tablet you have, and there's tons of data of buildings of Helsinki. So materials, building years, energy data, renovation data, and such things. And this is to build the understanding of the situation in Helsinki concerning the energy thing and the situation of buildings and heating systems of the buildings. There's also a link to our YouTube channel. There's a video clip of Helsinki Energy and Climate Atlas. If you are interested, you can go there and check the video clip over that. Yes, and in the Energy and Climate Atlas, we have also the solar potential analysis over the whole city. So in our semantic city model, we have 1 million semantic surfaces in Helsinki buildings, and every surface is analyzed, and the radiation per month is in the database. So you can click whatever wall, roof you have in your buildings or whatever building, and you see the solar potential. And then you can calculate and estimate what you get if you install the solar panels. It's for companies, it's for house owners, it's for statistical analysis and like that. That also works on every device. And then we do advanced wind flow analysis. So wind for us, it's always cold, it's always bad. And so as we have now several projects with high-rise buildings, it's more and more important to understand, to do the design before the building of the real construction, to analyze the wind conditions, to work in the digital twin way to optimize the wind flows and understand how it goes there. There's also a video clip in our YouTube channel. You can check the analysis there. And then we do what if analysis, and again there's a video clip there and about the sea level rising, and also this is a video clip we made for school children to show that what if happens, that if the sea level rises 10 meters, which is I hope it's not realistic, but of course it wakes up people to understand that something must be done. When we saw this in Netherlands, they look at this. This is a horror movie. Don't show us this. Okay, for us it's not so serious, but I understand the situation, of course, in Netherlands. Yes, and then we have a digital twins project report in our website. So here is how we make the city models, reality models, semantic city models, about the analysis, about little testing about platforms of the wind analysis, and so this is very horizontal project and project report. We got support from the government, also from this, and you see the link there. You can download it and use it freely. It's open data, and it explains how we have done it. It's a little bit old. It's 1 year old, so we are now a little bit advanced from this, but it's a good basic information like that. And then as we work with the 3D data, and I have worked with 3D data almost 30 years now, there are also challenges. It's not so easy. So you must be realistic with 3D data. And there was excellent article made in University of Delft in Gym International, and there was the challenges with 3D data. And as I totally agree with experience of these challenges, I like to end of this presentation, small presentation of just summarizing these challenges, and these are really good points. So of course you need standards, and data quality is extremely important, and now we can't really talk about data quality. We talk about lack of data quality, interoperability, even inside the global standards. It's huge. And of course there are pilots so much, but real use cases, real practical benefits, and how do you change this to the smart, sustainable, good life for people? That's something, and that's we want to do. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jarmo. Very great example, and also an example for how you move from pilots to actual deployment. I mean, you have it running for so many different applications, and you even have a tool that others could benefit from. So we very much appreciated hearing about this. Thank you. I'd now like to give the floor to Akrivi Kiusi from the Transforming Transport project on how transforming urban transport has benefited from data. And I'd just like to keep an eye on the clock. So if you can please stick to 7 minutes, that would be great. Thank you, Vivian.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you for the chance today to discuss on data. Actually, I will touch with my presentation, the pillar on your presentation, Andrea, on the data side, and why we have selected Transforming Transport. This is a quite big project. This is a Lighthouse one with 49 partners, but it has a proliferate, let's say, advantage that it has 13 pilots covering 7 domains. So while the pilots were running, we had registered many challenges. And these challenges, we have to share it with all, with some recommendations. So this is why on my presentation, you will see some suggestions on the policy side of how we can help the business and things running more easily. As you can understand, having this particular project, it was not an easy business. So we wanted to share it in an appropriate research manner. So we did all the way through all the policy necessary steps that the team that was on board hasn't defined. And the suggestions have been validated actually with a very good audience in different particular events, ITF, BDVA, but also with the help of the HLab committee we have on board from 10 different experts. Here I will show you a small example with some of the recommendations which are actually more related to what we're discussing here today. One of the major issues that the pilots have had an obstacle to overcome was GDPR. How GDPR started was generally to foster data economy and not being a barrier. This is what we discussed actually with the team. So the pilots came across on different fragmented policies regarding GDPR across Europe. So we have seen the problem that quite many stakeholders were hindered to share the data. So it made a bit the life of the pilot participants difficult. So we lost time, let's say, in a way, in order to follow specific methodologies to facilitate this, which delayed actually the business. So the main recommendation here was to push in a way the EU member states to adopting GDPR at the same level, because we haven't seen the same level of adoption. To touch a bit how we foresee the data space that we are discussing here today is that we would like to see a space where extra training is also offered, or some assistive tools that they were suggested by the pilots. Of course, a major need is the fact that GDPR documents are quite difficult to understand from people. So natural language explanations to be offered for everyday users would be a great add-on, and it's something that we would like the experts to hear. Also, there is an express need for the authorities to become more alert, especially on cases where GDPR is not fostering the business and it weakens the competition. So we need them, let's say, at the forefront. So we have suggested that national or regional authorities be the ones interpreting especially very complicated issues, such as who owns the data and which data are personal. And this, we actually seen it, especially on the city context, and on some of the examples I will show you from the 2 representative cities deriving from the 13 pilots that you will see later on. Also, the pilots raised the issue that they faced when it came to interact and collaborate with other companies. So we want to see more guidance, especially on the definition side, to come from more higher level authorities, especially on how data could be stored. And that could be a very nice additional service of this data space we're discussing here today. Also, we need a type of a consultant from what derived actually from the stakeholders discussions and the workshops and the big events that I have shown this presentation on specialized standardization issues and what type of data stakeholders could provide across platforms and how we can ensure in a way that this data are reliable and of good quality. So this was one of the major things that was discussed. Also, we followed the developments at the time before the project closed on the PSI directive of open data. And we have seen that there has been already some particular data sets being identified. So there are the experts on their own way try to contribute, especially on these working activities. So one additional issue was how we move to an open data landscape. Many pilots raised the issue of the use of open data being necessary for the offerings of new services. So in a way, they requested for additional further assistance from the EC and the national authorities in the understanding of what is open and big data, the value of it, because we have seen a different understanding from different stakeholder groups. People were not so triggered to share data because they didn't know what they will lose out of it. So it's a good and an interesting, let's say, additional consulting service that to give this knowledge to people so they know that there is monetization also when you open your data, and that could help you to develop your business, and this is up to you to decide. Generally, because we want people to think more openly and on sharing information. So I have here also for the participants some specific examples from airports and ports, and also you will see that the comments. So the overall motto was that we want to move from the data market economy to a structure where agreements and sharing becomes easy to understand. A lighter, let's say, recommendation was to find the best way to bring together the academia and the industry, because the industry cannot put so much effort at the moment and investments on too much innovation, and especially these new ideas are in the hubs of the academia. So we want to create a trust, let's say, environment from the industry side to push the big data and open up the capabilities and this collaboration. And that, we believe, could foster the shift of the regulation to incorporate big data in several processes. So far, the things are rather strict and change is not coming fast enough, and we see it and we register that. Just a mentioning before I move to where you can find information, because there are quite many public documents around. I also represent the Big Data Value Association, and I lead the discussion on the mobility and logistic subgroup. So you can contact me at the end of a conversation. So here you can see all the different things where you can find the information shared. Let's move quickly now on 2 examples. From the 13 pilots, the 2 examples were specifically mentioned on the city element. So we had the city of Tampere and the city of Valladolid, 2 different cities of morphologies, to different cities of technology readiness, and we wanted to see how we can test things on integrated urban mobility. So here you can see the different teams involved. So we looked on the main needs of the domains. We wanted to work on improving real-time situational awareness and use available and new data sources, because big data have to meet the 6 V's, as you all know. Inclusive also multi-source information, and volume is very important there. We wanted to see how to work utilizing big data for the development of traffic models, because we need to help the policy support here. And also, there were additional work on tools exploiting big data for optimizing urban freight delivery, because especially the freight element on the 2 cities is very important, and they have a very big load. So in Tampere, the focus was on real-time data for situational awareness and support for real-time decisions. And if we have a lead, the traffic modeling to support the city council decisions. So here we bring also, as an additional stakeholder, the authority on board. So we do a participatory approach for this particular pilot. So at all, the achieved objectives at the end of the project was a provision of a number of tools that could be used and offered. And we could get several information if we're building the data space that we're discussing here. So we also have tools for travelers that they were released with personalized automated messaging for critical events, and also a delivery of a parking management system, which was a web-based tool. I also added here for additional
I think you're muted now, Vivian. Can you please start concluding? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, and these were the data sets that we utilized in Tampere, and very quickly now, we can see what happened in Valladolid, because we talked on traffic simulation models. Very important is also for you to have a look on the different data sets that were available. You see, multi-source data sets are required. Okay, and here one recommendation here derived also from the user side was external data are best within demand time profile and external and internal through traffic. Feel free to read through on these ideas. I here have all the contacts that you may need, also from the pilots, and I have directed people also at the website. There's a lot of published material for you to have a read. And also a new book is coming out, supported by the Big Data Value Association, inclusive of these ideas I have just discussed, driven by TNO, and where I also contribute with bits of this particular presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vivian. No, thank you. It's extremely helpful, all the policy recommendations you have particularly included also for the data space, and I'm sure we'll be continuing discussions on that. And thank you for the great examples which helped you arrive at these policy recommendations also. So I'd like to give the floor now to Trinidad Fernandez from the Triangulum Project, and I will be sharing your slide now, Trinidad, but I will just want to make sure that you're there.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I'm just gonna share it, and here you go.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Trinidad Fernandez. I coordinate the Triangulum Project. It's one of the first smart cities and community projects fostered by the European Commission in the Horizon 2020 program. And the main goal, if you can go to the next slide, please. The main goal of Triangulum was to demonstrate a series of pilot projects with focus on energy, mobility, and ICT, mainly in 3 lighthouse cities. That was Eindhoven in the Netherlands, Manchester in the United Kingdom, and Stavanger in Norway. And parallelly, we have 3 follower cities, Leipzig in Germany, Prague in the Czech Republic, and Sabadell in Spain, always seeing what was being developed in these 3 countries that were developing the pilot, and meanwhile developing their own smart city strategy and how they would like to proceed and develop themselves as a smart city. The next slide, please. So in general, as you see, we have a really big consortium. The 3 main or the 3 lighthouse cities were basically a collaboration between the city, the industry partners, like for example in Manchester we had the Siemens, the Manchester City Council, and also, and one really important aspect was always to have a university partner, an academic partner, so we can work with triple helix cooperation and also with the citizen quadruple helix cooperation. And for us, it was really important to create and to understand this city ecosystem. Next slide, please. And now for you to understand this ecosystem, I will show you one example of the lighthouse city of Eindhoven. There we had pilot projects in 2 districts, and one was the Stripe S, a mixed use district that it was a former industry site, and the idea there was to develop it into a mixed use district, and while having different pilot projects. And the second one, where I will talk more in depth, it's Ict that it was a residential district. Next slide, please. As you can see here, it's just a representation for you to understand also the different kind of solutions that were developed in Eindhoven. For example, we have some pilot projects that were, for example, a smart street lighting, or for example, smart mobility management, also our urban data platform and renewable energy. So we had pilots that were all contributing to sustainable and smart cities, but with different approaches. And in this case, for example, in Eindhoven, and one aspect we found really crucial to understand this quadruple helix approach is that, in the Netherlands, we have 3 main cities. We have Amsterdam, we have Rotterdam, we had Eindhoven. Rotterdam is a port, but Eindhoven had the goal to become and to be the brain port of the Netherlands. And that vision and that goal included also this triple helix approach and this understanding, okay, we cannot just act as a city itself, we should act together with the industry partner and with the academia and of course with the citizens. And therefore, next slide, please. We have here one use case that will explain this a bit much, especially how to engage citizens with ICT. And this tool, it's called WoonConnect. We use it in the 2nd district I present, the Ict Vadbrug. And the idea, as you see in the images, is that we developed a 3D model of the houses of each tenant of this Ict Vadbrug district, and the tenant had the option to choose and to see, like as a game kind of, their own house. And the software was also showing which kind of changes each tenant can make in their own facade or insulation, or if they add solar panels, etc. And interactively, it was showing also how much energy they were saving, and also giving some tips to save energy, to save water, etc. So at the end, it was an interaction process between the tenant, the industry partner, that was the construction company, also the ITs that developed the tool, From the other side, we have also the Technical University of Eindhoven that was gathering the data of the energy savings and also translating that into the lessons learned of and to understand like how if for example if the people were happy with the solution, if there were some, for example, some challenges while using it. And of course the city of Eindhoven supporting this whole program. So we have this example on how these 4 main pillars work together. Next slide, please. And last but not least, also with these 4 pillars, what I would also like to add for this workshop is one aspect that, well, Andrea mentioned it really clear, but I think it's important to understand when the importance of ICT and infrastructure when we are developing a smart city, because at the end of the day, it's connecting and coordinating all the different interaction between the pillars and the infrastructure elements of a city. And if cities can invest and can focus more on this ICT and understand that it's at the end of the day a pivotal aspect of a sustainable and a smart city, and that at the end of the day, ICT it's a glue that enables this operability and to create more efficient and optimal solutions to connect different aspects of the infrastructure, such as water, waste, etc. And next slide, please. And last but not least, what I would also like to add as a general remark of what Triangulum is, as you can see in the very upper layer in the implementation, we did have some solutions. For example, the one that I chose now you to present with this 3D2 model tool, 3D BIM data tool, sorry. But at the end of the day, what we found out that was really more important for the cities itself and also for the academia, but also for the industry partners, it was the expertise that we were gaining in the smart cities, and also the collaboration between cities. And therefore, I found this to be present here. Well, it's an honor, but I'm really happy to be here to explain and show you what we did. Secondly, also the importance of monitoring activities and to showcase the impact of that this kind of solutions can have. And last but not least, also to add that this was one solution that at the end of the day, in our case, the Triangulum project was just a seed that helped the cities to foster smart city projects and act as an accelerator for other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trinidad. And I think it's interesting, first of all, what you have said about the need for having also smart citizens and a lot of the capacity building in order to use those tools. But also what you have said, and now also Vivian earlier, the understanding of the application of GDPR, whatever that data space may well be for smart cities applications, that will be extremely crucial. So thank you for that. We're coming close to the end, but I think given the time that we're just ahead of lunch, we can perhaps stay a little bit longer even after the last speaker, because we would still like to hear your feedback on a number of things. The last speaker is from a digital innovation hub. As you know, those are organizations that help cities and SMEs and other types of public sector and private sector organizations test particular digital tools. Javier Valero Criado is our speaker from the R4S Digital Innovation Hub in Spain. Javier, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes.
First of all, thanks to the organization for the invitation to the webinar. So my name is Javier Valero. I work at the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, and I'm responsible for developing the strategy related to digital innovation hubs in the university. So my intention for today's presentation is to explain to you our vision on how digital innovation hubs, or in this case, our digital innovation hub FRS, interacts with cities or municipalities, interacts with data spaces and with the services that could be provided by a data space, and how all this is integrated in our strategy as a hub. And at the end of my presentation, I will present you a little example of how this is all applied to service provided to the city of Madrid. So, sorry. So first of all, a little bit more about FRS. FRS is a DAH based in the region of Madrid. It is coordinated by the UPM in collaboration with strategic partners from different sides of the value chain, representing local industry, competence centers, and also the regional public administrations. FRS is a cross-domain DAH. That means that we provide a complete set of services for supporting companies, especially SMEs, in the digitalization processes by the use of artificial intelligence and robotics technologies applied to a wide range of sectors as health, transport and mobility, industry, society, and climate. These also apply to cities as a client, or to companies that could provide services to a city. As I mentioned before, we are deeply connected to data spaces, especially to Madrid's data space MIS, which has been labeled by the European Big Data Value Association as a silver eye space. I will talk a little bit more about it later on. So in this slide, I show you the description of what we call the innovation service cycle. That is the methodology that we apply for providing support to our clients and also to public entities or to cities. It has been designed under the concept from the idea to the market, aiming to support potential clients all the way in their digitalization processes. As you can see, it is split in 3 different stages, but each client could start from whatever stage of the cycle depending on their specific needs. My intention is not to describe the whole model, but to explain how a city could find here services and could connect to data spaces in the model as an asset. And that would happen mainly in the second stage, in the execution stage. But first, we usually go into a preparation stage, in the preparation phase, where we analyze the status of the client in terms of its digital maturity, and how prepared they are to address the digital transformation process. And based on these results, we help them to find out what their needs are, and to build a feasible roadmap and help them with the business model for the projects. We also provide support on the access to different funding sources they may need to implement the project. And that could be through an assessment on public funding programs or through the access to private investors as well. So once this first stage is completed and the project has been defined, we move on into the second stage, execution. That is actually the implementation of the technological part of the project. In this stage is where we interact in a deeper way with the data spaces. Through the connection with the data space, FRS is able to provide access to different technology assets and capacities available in the data space. For example, high performance computing, data processing or data visualization tools, access to specific data sets, support to data portal deployments, development of knowledge graphs, APIs, etc. The access to these resources could be combined with testing activities, along with the support of data experts from the hub, and usually complemented with specific training programs focused on data management, data science, artificial intelligence applied to business, etc. The specific needs about what specific data space resources and services could be needed by a city, for example, by a client, are going to be defined for each project in the preparation stage, in the first stage of the cycle. It's important to mention that the use of resources from the data space or assets from the DIH are previously regulated by specific contracts between the client and the data space or the DIH providers with an administrative support from FRS. After this second stage, the solution should be ready for going into the market or to be deployed, and we would go into the third stage that we name commercialization. And this, according to the roadmap and the business plan we have defined in the preparation stage, we provide cross-cutting services as mentoring and specific training programs on commercialization strategies, data governance, IPRs, etc., and also combined with the access to networking actions that are organized by the hub and aiming to reach potential clients or other key stakeholders. So, okay, in this slide, there are more in detail some of the most relevant technical capacities for MIS. I'm not going to spend more time on this. We will share the slides after the workshop so you can find out what are the capacities of this specific data space. But I would like to spend the rest of my time to present you an example of a service, a success case provided by our DIH that connects to cities and to data spaces, specifically to the city of Madrid and concretely to the Regional Consortium of Transport of Madrid. The need they had was to understand better the mobility patterns of the elderly people in order to enhance their use of public transport. To carry out the project, data from more than 300,000 seniors' public transport cards were used. The Regional Consortium of Transport provided this data to the data space, and the services that we provided from the DIH and the data space were mainly consultancy and technology services. If you remember the model, that correspond to stage 1 and 2, preparation and execution, as well as a short training program to operators from the Regional Consortium of Transport in order to train them on how to use and manage the different technology tools that came out from the project. The outcomes of the project were basically the implementation of descriptive models of mobility patterns of these elderly people, the relation with other groups of users, and the generation of predictive models about the behavior of individuals based on these mobility patterns. So that's all from my side. You have my email in this slide if in case you want to contact me, and I hope I'm able to be respectful with the time you gave us, Andrea. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Javier, and thank you so much for all the speakers. No, we're a little bit short on time, but I hope we can still stay with us. So the speakers, I would like to ask you to think about, what kind of solutions or how could a smart communities data space help you in address some of those issues you've raised around the data. But I would, at the meantime, while you're thinking, ask my colleague to show Slido and get the feedback from the audience on two very relevant questions. So the first one would be, and the way we will do this is you will be adding the specific word that you're thinking, and it's going to show up as a word cloud. And once you have started entering the word you're thinking, it will already show similar ones which are already have been added. So which type of which data types related to urban digital services would be the most impactful to achieve the Green Deal's objectives? So we're thinking here of what kind of data do you think we should be looking at in terms of prioritizing data that would be most impactful to achieve the Green Deal objectives. So please start typing your ideas, and then if you see that something similar has already been added, you can just pick that. So we're looking at data types, and there's only 3 of you for the moment. So please, those who are still online, if you can take a few more moments and add your thought about this. So we're seeing now mobility, geospatial, air quality, energy, renewables, healthcare, and so on. So please go ahead. We'll give it another 10 or so seconds. And we're seeing energy and mobility as well as metadata, yes, coming up. Just a few more seconds. Maybe we can reach about 20 people if you're still around. Okay. But we also have energy, geospatial metadata, but also coming up transport, air quality, mobility. Q. Okay. Perhaps we can soon. Pollution is also there, air quality, population density. Okay, interesting. And geospatial is coming up quite important. I wonder why with the Inspire community. So perhaps just another second and we have 30. Okay, energy geospatial are at the top. Thank you very much. And let's move to the next question, which is the last Slido question. What are the main challenges of smart cities in relation to data? Here again, please feel free to add your free word and then we'll see what's coming out as the main challenges in terms of data. We've heard quite a lot, but I think this is going to help us also identify what we would like to achieve with the data space. Interoperability is seemingly quite important. Okay, quality, integration, governance beyond interoperability seem to be on the top. And another 5 seconds. So quality, so interoperability is clearly on the top. Then we have governance and quality. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We can stop here. And I just like to open the floor first to the panel, but perhaps if others also from the audience wish to come in, you can do that through the um, chat. But from the panelists, if anyone would like to come in, like in relation to what we've discussed, the smart communities data space, what functions should such a data space have to be effectively addressing the data related issues you have all indicated? If anyone wants to come in before we close the session, that would be very helpful. I mean, you all had identified issues, possible ways to overcome, but what functions if there was such a data space? Somebody's going to talk, yeah?
Yes, hello, this is Jarmo Suomesta here. So I like to emphasize the maintenance of the data. So even though there's a Internet of Things and real-time data, there's also data sets, and they are very quickly out of date. And if they are old and they are not accurate, you can't expect good results. So the maintenance is one thing that I have in experience. It's rather challenging to organize, but worth of trying. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jarmo. Anyone else would like to, from the speakers or from the audience, what are the main things we should be focusing on in terms of
maybe I can just, I agree with Jarmo that this maintenance or curation of data and making sure that the quality of data is good, so that because if you have good quality data, then you will be able to make some good analysis over that. Otherwise, it won't help. But it's not really straightforward, and it probably require a lot of effort to establish such a good quality and then maintain it later on. And of course, apart from that, just some sort of standardized interface so that we can easily access data, understand what data is available and how to use it in further processing is something that is required. But that's to some extent already addressed by initiatives like open data, for example.
Thank you, Jan. Anyone else, or perhaps on issues such as data governance? Most of you were mentioning important agreements on how to use data. Some of you were indicating issues related to better understanding who owns the data, how can data be reused, or essentially the implication or application of GDPR. What other issues or challenges should a possible data space for smart communities be addressing? What functions should we be thinking? Some of you were talking about training facilities and
May
so on.
I?
So please go ahead.
First of all, because we're discussing on a data space, the idea is that we have to put the authorities at the forefront. That should be a participatory activity because they need to be more alert on data issues. And they should be the ones interpreted complicated issues as well. So all the type of training and guidance, let's think of it as a consulting guidance on the type of data to be used across platforms, how we can make data be more reliable, or how to ensure the quality of data, as well as of how to use explanations on difficult situations of GDPR or of interoperability with more language explanations that are close to the stakeholders. That should be triggered and come from the part of the authorities because it's easier to be controlled that way. So people can comply and standardize the inputs they provide. And of course, ensure what the colleagues have said prior to that. Ensure the maintenance, the good quality. I mean, all that should be guided, let's say, from the authority side. And it's necessary that we have them in this participatory.
Thank you.
Andrea?
Yes.
Francesco as well. I can.
Yeah.
Okay, no. Another couple of aspects. I agree with all things said before, but I think it's important to consider also privately held data. For certain services, you really need this type of data. So availability of this data. So I think the governance in this aspect is important. And also, I think we need to invest not only on infrastructure and data, but also on platform. You can see the importance of platform, as it was said before. And also, for example, when you speak about car, also the vehicle is carry the data of the infrastructure. In this case, for example, also in this case of COVID, where we are all working from home, the platform we are using to communicate now is WebEx, Teams, Zoom, are all US platform, and that's a bit a limit for Europe. I think we should strengthen this aspect of investing in platforms.
Thank you. Extremely relevant of what you have said. And as you know, we're really looking at first as the both things you've mentioned, privately held data with public interest. As we all know, it's quite particularly relevant at smart cities level, where we're seeing, of course, the public and the private sectors services combined. But also what you said about platforms, and we're certainly, as you also heard from the OASC, there's a lot of efforts made in order to have interoperable platforms. So indeed, any player, there would be a fair market for platforms, urban data platforms, any player, even European players could come in. Now, what is also interesting in the context of the conceptualization of this data space would be how these different data platforms could then connect to one another or at a European federated level. So in order, as what Strani also said earlier, how to have a solution that builds on a set of data already existing in one city to be able to make that portable or replicable easily in another city. And you mentioned earlier that, of course, you have the legacy problems, you have the data structure problems and so on. And in that case, if you have platforms that can communicate easily with one another, that would make things easier. Is there anyone else who would still like to add something on what are the kind of important elements of a potential smart communities data space that we should be all considering? That would be very much welcome now, or of course later. If I can ask Annika, perhaps just to drop one more time the email address that we would use to collect your input later on. No? If not, I would really like to thank you all for all your contributions, for the speakers, for the excellent preparation and also specific efforts made to make it very relevant for this very timely discussion, both on how smart cities can help the Green Deal, which we heard a lot of excellent examples on, but also how can we make it actually scale up in all cities of Europe, and how we can help, for example, with the creation of a smart communities data space, achieve that. So thank you all. All the presentations will be published on the website of Inspire, where you also registered. We welcome your input and further thoughts on this smart communities data space, helping cities reach the Green Deal objectives anytime. And we hope to continue discussing with you. As you heard, there will be a discussion platform in the Inspire space, and hope to see you there or another occasion. Thank you all. Bye for now.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you very
you.
much.